So while Kelly is letting folks who are joining in, we're just simply thrilled and welcome each and every one of you to the Caregiving Wisdom Series. If this is your first time here with us tonight, especially welcome. And we'll share that what we do in the Wisdom Series is we invite experts, and experts really is a personal expertise because the person that's going to be sharing with us has that experience of caregiving, as well as professionally has experience that speaks to multiple aspects of caregiving. I'm Deb Kelsey Davis, and with me is Kelly Johnson, and together we're the co-founders of Nourish for Caregivers. And again, we're so blessed to have you here tonight. We want to honor your time commitment. We know that you all are very busy. You're caring for others. We will stay to 1 hour. If anyone wants to stay over with questions, we'll continue to go through those together. Your time is precious, though, and we hope that tonight you find the time together uplifting, inspiring, and encouraging and spiritually nourishing. Again, please make sure to locate your chat down there on the lower left-hand side, because that's where we'll collect your questions, and we'll come back to those during the Q&A. So welcome, and with that, we'll start with what we usually do, which is prayer.
So we just take a moment to take a deep breath and place ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Lord, you know my heart. You know when I am feeling joyful and when I am feeling despair. Please hold me close, especially now with each and every struggle I am facing. I am trying to deal with the changes in my life during this time of caregiving, but I am not always doing so well. It is hard to accept these changes. Jesus, I know that it may not be your will to remove this hardship from my life, because the very thing that is causing me pain and sadness, you are already preparing to show me the beauty and the blessings that are part of it all. Help me, Lord, to find peace and acceptance. Help me to trust you. Amen.
Amen.
And I think, Heidi, I accidentally muted you, so you're going to have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
I think I did. I was actually trying to reach my husband. My daughter's going kind of crazy up there, so I was trying to get him to quiet her. I can't reach him though. So if you hear shrieks in the background, I'm not torturing anybody. It's just my family household is the way that it is. So
How it is.
Well, Heidi, we are so excited to have you tonight. And before we introduce you to everyone, could you share a fun fact with us tonight with everyone?
Sure, I can share a fun fact. So when I was in my 20s, I found myself at a crossroads and trying to decide whether I would do this or do that. And it was a pretty big difference between the this and that. And so the way that I decided what I was going to do was I got on a plane and I flew to Acapulco, and I got on a Mexican bus and I traveled across the country with a journal and a bag of apples. And I traveled across the entire country praying and journaling. And that was how I made my decision of what I was going to do at the end of the trip. And so journaling has always been a really powerful tool for me to be able to help discern and to think about it. But I just thinking about that first time that I really used that tool seriously was, and I don't know how fun that fact is, but it's kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
That was a big decision. And so I took a big trip cross country on a Mexican bus, and it was an amazing experience, and it really helped me sort things through. So
here you are today with us. That bus took you, and
that's
you're
right.
with us today. And you know, your topic, when love means letting go. When love means letting go. The 4 movements of prayer for caregivers and journaling. Heidi, I want to share with everyone a little bit of Heidi's background and why this is a topic that especially, not only is Heidi an expert in, but it speaks to so many of us. Heidi's a full-time caregiver for her mother with dementia and 2 young adults with special needs. So Heidi writes about prayer and Catholic spirituality on her blog, Life on the Road Less Traveled. We'll talk a little more about how to find that blog at the end. She's an acquisitions editor for Ave Maria Press, located out of Notre Dame, Indiana. And she's holding up the book. Heidi is the one who found us, Ellie and I, and helped us to produce our first real book, a full-colored journal called The Caregiver's Companion. And we're eternally grateful to Heidi for that. Thank you, Heidi. All right. Heidi is a convert to Catholicism from an eclectic Christian tradition. And Heidi graduated with her master's in theology from Sacred Heart in Detroit in 2012. She's written or compiled several books, including Lent and Advent with St. Teresa of Calcutta and Behold Your Mother. There's a couple of other books, Heidi, that are particularly close to me that you've compiled. And being a Catholic since 1995, Heidi's found that her faith has been a catalyst for healing and reconciliation when it comes to difficult family relationships. Mm-hmm. And tonight, what she wants to do is share her story with us of how prayerful journaling helped her to rest old issues from the past in order to have a closer and more personal relationship with her mother in the final years of her life. She wants to explore how this practice can help you find peace as a caregiver too. Heidi, without any further ado, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Deb. Thanks. Kelly, it's so nice to be here. Very flattering to be asked to present. Usually I'm fixing other people's sentences and not delivering them, but I'm happy to share my experiences of what I've found. Initially, both as a mother, my husband and I foster adopted a sibling group in 2005. And that was when I first started to experience that idea of loving means letting go. Letting go of our own expectations, letting go of the own things that we have experienced from the past that are keeping us from moving forward. Since 2017, I've been taking care of my mom along with my husband who has dementia. And that was also a time of healing as I learned to see my mom through different eyes. We had a very difficult relationship. When I was growing up, I left home fairly early because I needed to find that independence. But these last few years of being able to recognize and see my mother through different eyes has really helped me to receive the healing that I've needed, to be able to give and receive forgiveness, and just in general, being able to experience the kind of loving relationship that I've always wanted with my mother. I'm really happy to report that I've been able to experience that in the last few years in a way that I wasn't always able to receive that love from her earlier, not because she was not capable of giving it, but we were just in such a different place and had so many things that had happened that it just needed to be processed and with a little bit more intentionality. So one of the ways that I've learned to do that over the years is through this process of journaling, prayer journaling. And we'll go into that into a little detail in a little bit. As caregivers, it's very easy for us sometimes to sort of be constantly on go, go, go mode, and always looking for the next thing that needs to be done or the next problem that needs to be solved. And we can forget about taking care of our own needs, and we can sometimes forget to set helpful and useful boundaries. You know, we need to recognize that we are only human, that we have limits as well, and that sometimes letting go of our own expectations of ourselves can be a form of love as well. And so we'll be talking with that a little bit more in a few minutes, but I just wanted to sort of give you a little bit of background about why I've chosen this particular presentation, and hopefully you'll be able to identify with some of the things that I've experienced. So why should we blog? This particular picture is from a group of parents who were taking care of special needs kids and foster and adoptive kids. And one of the reasons that we blog, and whether it's online or whether we privately in our journal, is to know that we're not alone. When we share this part of ourselves with other people, whether it's in a support group of some kind or just online through a blog. What beautiful things about blogs, you can, if things that are really private and quiet, you don't want to share them, you just set the private tab on that particular post and you can go back and look at it for yourself. Other times, if you're looking for, questions that you're really wrestling with and trying to figure out what to do, sometimes sharing about it in a more public space through a trusted set of people like what Deb and Kelly have with the Nourish for Caregivers, that can be a real source of support and enlightenment at times. And so that's another good reason to write down the things that we're experiencing as caregivers. Okay. The next thing, I'm afraid I'm messing this up here. To have a safe place to say what we are feeling. Now, sometimes, when we're dealing with our loved ones, whether they're teenagers or whether they're elderly, the things that we feel come bubbling up to the surface are not always the things that would be prudent to actually say. It could cause additional confusion, hurt feelings. It could actually wear at the relationship. And so having a place to journal in a private place, especially in your own personal journal, can really help with that. It can help work through those things. We journal to help us remember the things that we might otherwise forget. When I look at my blog, A Life on the Road Less Traveled, I capture the stories that I've enjoyed with my mom, whether it's the times where she's asked to pray for me during her lucid moments when she sees I'm struggling with something with one of the kids and she's asked to pray for me, or when she recounts a story that I didn't remember from my early childhood and get a chance to write those things down. One of the things that's been really precious for me is watching my mom doing her own form of journaling. Her handwriting is scratchy and almost illegible, but being able to write down the things that are important to her as a way of getting out the things that are worrying her and causing her anxiety. When I see her doing that kind of journaling for herself, it comforts me to know that she has that outlet. And that really is a way to help us remember the things that we might otherwise forget. To help us forgive what we cannot forget. Many of us have hard memories of things that have happened in the past that have wounded us deeply. And sometimes journaling can be an excellent way of being able to get all those thoughts down in a safe place that help us to turn to God and say, can you take these and can you help me carry this particular burden? And Jesus is always there to take that burden from us. At least not necessarily the pain, not necessarily the wounds, it just doesn't magically go away. But the part that causes us to be weighed down with unforgiveness and anger and resentment, those are the things that he will take from us and carry for us if we ask him. Most of all, we journal to keep short accounts with God, who's the one who knows us best and loves us no matter what we feel. And so having that safe place to be able to unburden ourselves is so important. So what do you need for prayer journaling? It can really vary from person to person. You might want a notebook that you have just for this purpose. This is the one that I have. It's got a little leather strap, and you can tuck into a purse. You can carry it with you wherever you go. Other people can type faster than they can write. So going online and creating a blog, even if it's private and buttoned down, it allows you to speak freely and to not worry that anybody else is going to read it until you're ready for them to read it. A favorite pen or markers, a Bible. Some people like to actually write in their Bible. Avi just came out with a beautiful note-taking Bible that it has the margins on the side where you can just write your thoughts as you're reading through the scriptures, and you can write the thoughts that come to you. which is another form of prayer journaling that can be really beautiful. And then sometimes just having a few photographs or mementos that evoke a strong memory. Could be your special prayer beads or special saint cards or however it is. I have a picture of Jesus that I like to have up there. And so when I'm journaling, it's almost as if I'm talking to him directly because I have that visual prompt right there. And so those are all things that can be helpful to if you're just starting out and needing a little bit of prompting or needing a little bit of cueing. So the 4 moments of prayer journaling. The first one is, I love you, or I love her because. So the 4 movements of prayer journaling can be remembered by the word acts, A-C-T-S. So the first one is adoration. And that's one that says, I love you, or I love her because. When we express this and we go back and we remember the things that we loved about this person, it can help us carry the harder stuff. The picture that you see there in the presentation is my maternal grandmother. And before she passed away, each of us wrote a letter to her. And you see those in the, I have 3 sisters. So it was myself and my 3 sisters all wrote a letter to her in the final weeks of her life. And then my sister is the artist who drew the actual picture, and then we framed it and gave it to our mother as a way of being able to remember her own mother and be able to process her grief. And so now that sits in my mother's room in her group home where she's living now. And she's able to look every day and remember the tribute that her daughter has paid to her mother and look at that and be reminded of the amazing woman that she was. So if you were going to go and let's say that you are going to journal about your loved one right now, let's take a moment. What would you write? I love her, I love him, or I love you, God, because. Let's think a moment about how you might complete that sentence. I love you, God, because you gave me the strength for another day. I love you, God, because you've made it so beautiful outside, and I'm so grateful we can finally go outside. How would you complete that? Now for one last thought, how would you complete the thought? What are some of the qualities that you love about yourself? What are some of the things that you see that God has put in you that you want to say to God that you love him because he has given you these things? The next movement of prayer journaling is, I'm sorry, God. This is contrition. This is in the word acts, it's the word contrition. This picture here says contrition to me because of how often I'm in the middle of these 2 generations and the frustrations that I experience between tending to the needs of my daughter and tending to the needs of my mother. I so often feel like I fall short. And so I have to go back. I'm sorry, God, because of this. It's a simple acknowledgement of the areas where I feel weak or in need of strengthening or support. It's not about beating yourself up over having failed. It's a simple acknowledgement of our humanness and the fact that we can't do this all on our own. So by writing these things in the journal and being able to take write down the things where you are struggling, sometimes it can help you to process and actually think about not only where the struggle is, but also where some of the solutions might lie. So it's another important part of the journaling process. The third part is thank you, God. This is the Thanksgiving part of it. Salonis Casey used to teach that when there's something that we need, we should always thank God ahead of time. The beautiful thing about prayer journaling is that we can go back and see God answer the prayers that we make to him, often in ways that we don't anticipate. So for example, I just was at the lady who takes care of my mom, one of the caregivers. She was going to have a surgery, but she didn't have any money and she didn't have any insurance, at least at that time. And so there at the group home, I was praying with her that God would provide for her, that God would show a way for her to be able to get the surgery that she needed and still be able to pay her bills. And today she came up to me and she was so excited because, we had thanked God that he was going to provide for her. And sure enough, God came through, and she now has emergency Medicaid, and she now has the things that she needs to get her through that surgery. But being able to step up and really record these prayers, and then the answer to the prayers is a really good strength building exercise to help us to be able to trust that God is going to meet the next set of challenges as well. What do you do if you can't see anything to thank God for? What if the things are just so difficult right now that it's hard for you to find anything specific to thank God for? I think part of the problem is sometimes that we go trying to look for the big things to thank God, when sometimes it's just a matter of being reminded of the small blessings. We can thank God if today was a bad day. We can thank God for when we last had a good day, when our loved one's memory was clear or her mind content. We can thank God for the precious memories that we recall, the cookie baking and the trips outside. We can simply thank God for having another day and for the strength that he gave us to get through it. So these don't necessarily need to be huge answers to prayer, but they are simple acknowledgments that, yes, God, we've trusted you to provide, and we see how you've provided for us, and we're going to trust you for the future as well. Okay. Then the last one is, I need you, God, which is the supplication part of the Acts word. When I first found my mom in the nursing home down in Georgia, where my father had placed her after she had her break, he was not able to take care of her because, for a variety of reasons, but he was not able to take care of her. And so he had her placed in this place that was just a horrible place. And I'm sure many, if you've ever had to look into nursing homes or group homes and have had to struggle with that decision of, what can I do? How do I fix this situation? I don't know if I have the strength to be able to be the full-time, everyday caregiver. God, what should I do? But this picture reminds me of the day that I went and I actually picked up my mother from the nursing home and brought her home to live with us. And we've had that 3 years. She was drinking the Chick-fil-A shake that she got in the airport. And this picture says to me that, this was at a time my mom really needed me, and God made it possible for us to connect our relationship. And, if those who are listening are struggling right now with some aspect of their caregiving, and then they're not sure whether they have it in themselves to be able to go through, returning back to the title, sometimes love does mean letting go and recognizing that we have our limits. Other times it's a matter of identifying where the needs are so that God can fulfill those needs. So I just wanted to leave you with those 4 movements that sometimes we need to be ready to ask God to help us. Okay, so let's start with the next one. So just to review the 4 movements again: adoration, appreciate who this person is for you right now. Affirm what you know to be true rather than what you feel in the moment. The posture of this movement is active receptivity. So you just sort of open up your mind and you open up your heart and say, God, show me who this person is right now and what is true about this person right now. Show me who this person is. How do you see this person? How do you see me? These are all the postures of somebody who is in adoration. I love you, God, because. Contrition is a recognition of our own limits and weaknesses. We are affirming that God is waiting to help. For when I am weak, then I am strong. The posture of contrition is being openly vulnerable, not trying to cover up, not trying to put ourselves forward as super strong, because we all know that we have moments of great weakness, but allowing God to fill those voids. Thanksgiving, recollection of all the ways that God has been present and allowing you to tell your part of the prayer story through the journaling process. Solanus Casey, tell God what you need and then thank him ahead of time. The mental posture is gratefully expectant. Then the final movement is supplication, awareness that I cannot do this on my own, recognition that God's mercy exceeds our deepest needs. And the mental posture is intimately confident. We go to him as a father, knowing that our Father cares about us and that he wants to provide what we need. So the final question that I'd want to present here to you, which of the 4 movements that we just talked about are loudest in your life today? Adoration, I love you, God. Contrition, I'm sorry, God. Thanksgiving, thank you, God. Or supplication, I need you, God. And that's it. For more stories, if you want to read some of my blogging and journaling, come on over to Life on the Road Less Traveled, HeidiSaxton.com. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Heidi, for going through all of that. Might be kind of fun if you go back one slide, maybe we could even put some of our thoughts on where we are in the chat. I think that might be kind of fun to see where people are, and also use the chat to go ahead and ask any questions that anyone might have. But you had asked, kind of what's speaking loudest with the musical notes in there.
There we go.
Which of the 4 movements are loudest in your life right now, and where people are kind of feeling. Might be kind of interesting. And any questions that people have for Heidi into the chat.
Heidi, I'd like to just say thank you for what you shared, because journaling isn't always easy for someone to start to do, or even if you've been journaling, it may be difficult because of what you're opening up or sharing. But I recently read an article around COVID that this kind of journaling, there was a study done that people were actually measured their stress levels and their immune response in their bodies actually improved when sharing and journaling and kind of putting out on paper or, on a phone, whatever the case might be, and opening up and really getting to that place of vulnerability. What do you find? How could you help those of us out here who maybe start journaling, but it's more superficial, and then to get down to the more vulnerable levels so that we can get those benefits of journaling?
Right. That's a good question. Prayer is really an important part of this kind of journaling, and just starting out by asking God, and I should have mentioned this at the very beginning, but asking God at the beginning to shed a light, sort of a spotlight on what needs to be shared or what needs to be said. God is he wants us to know him intimately, and he wants us to be aware of what is going on inside ourselves. And so the Holy Spirit is actually very good about coming and bringing thoughts to our head. And one of the powerful parts of journaling is that you can just write uncensored and put down all those thoughts and impressions without having to worry about, does this make sense? Is this real? Where is this coming from? All of that self-censoring is unnecessary when it's just you and the journal. You can just put it down. You can sketch in the margins. You don't even have to follow the lines. You can use different colors for different moods. It can be as creative as you want, and it can be just as completely uncensored as you want. One of my very favorite prayers that I like to use when I'm journaling, or almost any time really, is a prayer by Charles Dufault called the Prayer of Abandonment. I have this little exercise for married couples that I'm putting together, and it's all based on this particular prayer. So I'd like to just read it to you now. This is something that I frequently will take a line from this and reflect on it when I'm doing my own writing. Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me and in all your creatures. I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart. For I love you, Lord, and so I need to give myself to surrender myself into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are my Father. And so when we go to him with our little etches and our little drawings, you just think of ourselves like that little kid who's running up to the grandparent with the little picture of a flower or whatever it is. We don't have to impress God. There's nothing we can do to impress God, but he loves our offerings and he loves those expressions of trust and of love and of need. All of those things are pleasing to the Lord. And so that's what we are getting to experience. Sometimes when we find it hard to start journaling, sometimes what we're experiencing is that whether it's being embarrassed because we don't have the right words, or we're self-conscious of the content of words, God, if I tell God that I'm angry about this or I'm angry at him, what will he think? God already knows you're angry at him. Nothing that you can say would ever surprise him, but he also knows that this stuff needs to come up and it needs to be brought to the light so that it can be healed and it can be processed and all these things. So never worry about telling God something that you're afraid that he'll get angry about. That's not who he is. That's not what he does.
I think that's such an important point, is that recognizing and using journaling. I think sometimes just shifting our mindset with it is that, if you think, oh, I don't want to keep a diary, or I don't want to keep a journal, but recognizing it as a part of prayer and using that, as you just described, as a way of entering into a deeper relationship with the Lord through understanding who you are and how God is in your life, is such an important way, kind of, or different way of maybe looking at it, that kind of can overcome some of those boundaries initially that people might be feeling.
Sure.
I think that was so helpful.
I think too, for caregivers, I love how you said up front, Heidi, that, we're being pulled in a lot of different directions. It's hard sometimes to step away from all those distractions, but at the same time, in doing so, in journaling and using what you've laid out here, acts, adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication, it seems to me, and even if I look at my own journaling and I look back, the maturity that comes from continuing to journal, just continuing, push through it and come back and keep doing it, that we can begin to see the blessings, even in the midst of that chaos that we're finding ourselves in.
Yeah. One of the things about, caregiving, especially if you're caring for someone with dementia, is that there really are such highs and lows. And one day it's like a series of jigsaw puzzles. Each one is different from the last. And some of them are going to be really dark, and some of them are going to be much more light. And it's easy to get stuck in the heaviness of it and the darkness of it. So that when you take the time to write these little positive memories, even if it's something like a glimmer of recognition when you sang a song that she remembered from, your growing up years, or she got a card from a friend and her face just lit up, or whatever it is that has that momentary aha connection that allows you to connect back to that person that you knew so many years ago. Those things are precious. That's one of the best parts I liked about your book, where it talks about that chapter where it talks about recapturing those memories and being able to look back on them, whether it's as the person declines more and more or has to be moved into a group home, like what my mom just did. That was another hard part of letting go, but it was absolutely necessary for all of us. But being able to look back on those days and remember those happy times and know that we did our best for that loved one in that moment, that we were present to them. That's just, that can be really consoling when things get hard later on down the road.
Absolutely. And I think, invite everyone, if you've got an experience with journaling that you're willing to share, make a note of that in the chat, or, maybe back in the day it was called diaries. If you found or discovered the writings of your loved one or a family member and how that maybe touched you, how it changed your perspective, go ahead and share that with us. We'd love to hear how journaling maybe has impacted your life. So
appreciated, Heidi, when you were talking about, and I think it came into the in the Thanksgiving part, when you were talking about being able to see answered prayers. Journals are wonderful that way, as we can begin to see how prayer is being answered and help us to hold on to that promise. But in talking about the Thanksgiving part, I liked how real you were, because there are some days, and some days that can string together, that it's really hard to find much to be thankful for. And I appreciated that reality check with that, and suggestions on other ways to look for things to be thankful for. That, maybe it's just today's another day. Maybe it's coffee was really good this morning, or whatever it may be, that it doesn't have to be the big things.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciated that.
Heidi, in your journaling, do you also journal about sort of the experience of caring for your mother, and maybe reflecting part of her journey as well in your journal? And what does that do for you if you do that?
I don't know if this is going to answer your question exactly, but one of the things that has been most useful to me, especially in this last year, as I faced certain challenges with my daughter, she's bipolar disease, and which is what her symptoms have gotten worse and worse. And so it's not been possible to have the two of them together in the same house, which is why we found a place for Mom that I can visit her. But anyway, as I've gone through and I've written through the experiences of trying to tend to the needs of both of them, not only did it help me sort through the right course of action in order to meet their needs, but it also opened up my eyes to help understand each of them a little better, because through my mother watching my daughter and I interact, I could have more empathy for what it must have been like for her to raise me. And as my daughter watches my mother and I interact, I can get a little bit better sense of what her experience must be like. When I was growing up, and always felt like I was on the outside. My mother was frequently distracted taking care of my sister who had cancer. It helped me to remember those feelings, so that I was more cognizant of, I wonder if the reason Sarah's acting up is because she's feeling outside and she's feeling uncared for. And maybe that's so. It was just helped me writing through in these journals and understanding and trying to see things from the perspective of who I was at a particular time in my life, and empathizing a little bit more on either end of the spectrum, either as a mother or as a daughter. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It absolutely does. And yeah. I received a message in chat from Rob saying, I've been journaling for a decade, currently using the app Day One. I use it across my phone and my computer. I found a lot of meaning meditating on the day's gospel, also via the Hallow app. And I love the Hallow app too. I've found the same thing. And
That's
then
great.
Dictating my voice to text so that I don't get out of the prayerful mindset. The Holy Spirit has taught me so much through that dictation.
That's great. It's wonderful. So it's called Day One. What's the name of the app?
Day One is the name of the app. And also the Hallow app, which is an app some of you may be familiar with for spiritual nourishment.
HALLO.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Rob, for sharing that.
And Mona put into the chat, when my mother died, I was out of town. I journaled on the plane, 4 double-sided pages that included how much I loved doing different things with her, what she taught me, and how much I appreciated her. I didn't reread it until 10 years later, and was astounded at how deep my love was for her and how honest I was, which was beautiful.
That is beautiful.
That is. I think, thank you for sharing that, Mona. I think being able to, like we talked about, being able to look back and see snapshots of yourself at a particular time, or snapshots, kind of how you talked about, Heidi, of the relationships at different times too, is beautiful. And being able to see that kind of raw, overwhelming feeling that you had, Mona, as you wrote right after your mother had passed away, must just be an amazing reminder of your mom.
Mm.
The mere act of journaling, so healing. And I sense that just in reading, both of these comments from Rob and from Mona. Oftentimes, journals are such a private thing. I noticed, Heidi, that you were talking about, securing and tucking away that journal, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would you advise, or how might you suggest to people who maybe have that fear of, oh, somebody's going to discover what I've written?
Mm.
Maybe that might be holding some people back. I've heard that, before. Any thoughts on that?
Well, they have these little safes. These little, they're just like a box safe. They don't cost that much money. You can just set them in your bathroom scale and lock them up if that's what you want to do. I actually have a friend who I've already entrusted with the task. If something happens to me suddenly, that she knows where I keep my journals, she'll take them and burn them for me, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I wouldn't want my family members necessarily to go through and read. And so having a safety plan like that is just part of what I do. With John Paul II, when he passed away, one of the last things he did was he asked for all of his journals to be burned. I totally resonated with that, although a secret part of me is really pleased that they didn't follow through and that they still have these documents. But there is a certain amount of vulnerability that comes with expressing yourself on that level, and finding a way to make a safety plan to dispose of whatever it is that is that private is an important part of letting yourself be free to actually say what you need to say.
Thank you for that tip. I had no idea there was this little safety thing I could use. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a group of friends who have the same kind of relationship where they'll go in and take burn the journals. Burn the journal, friends.
You gotta have a burn the journal friend,
Exactly.
It's usually the same friend who can be trusted to come with a sangria at the end of a really bad week.
That's good. Good.
It's been really interesting that this Caregivers Club is a club that none of us wishes to be in the first place. But one of the gifts that I found is that it has helped me to make such authentic friendships with people who are in the same boat and understand exactly what it is that we're going through, and being able to empathize and be able to support. It's such a gift, but it means being willing to put a hand up and say, help, I really do need help, or I really do need somebody to listen to me. And the online Facebook group that I had, Catholic Caregivers, I've come across, and I believe both you ladies are in that group too. Just people being able to come up and say, I'm so happy I was able to take my mother to the hairdresser this week. And we all get how important that is and what an ordeal it is to get her there. Or I'm so sad because, my mother is quickly declining, and have instantly a whole group of people that are there to pray with you. That's just such an important gift that you give yourself by joining these kinds of groups and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that way.
I think you said something in there that is really important with journaling too, is that idea of asking for help. Sometimes we don't even know how to ask for help. And I think by journaling, we can begin to see where we need help, where are the areas that are causing us stress or pain or discomfort, or, that we just can't do, whatever it is. And then begin to take a look at, okay, when someone does ask, here's what I can tell them. Or if it's like this big monster thing, through journaling or writing, you can begin to break it down into,
Yes.
well, I can't deal with this, but if I take away this piece, then this becomes a little bit more something I can deal with. So
it also helps with difficult family members. Caregiving is difficult for the caregiver, but it's also really difficult for the people on the outside who are you're not actively caregiving and may have mixed feelings about that. Some of them wish they could be there and can't, or some people are, resentful or whoever. And the process of journaling and getting and down and helping to see that person at different times in their life going back, whether it's a younger sibling or whoever it is, and being able to take a snapshot in time of who that person was and what they needed and what they wanted and what they were like. It can help be a little bit more compassionate and understanding, which is good for them, but it's also good for us because it keeps the resentment and the bitterness from growing, which just weigh us down and make it so much more difficult to do the job that we have to do. So to the extent that we're able to let go, love means letting go. Right. And that's one of the ways that we do it, is by processing these things in our journal.
That's great. Yeah.
Monique asked another question. For people who cannot write because of your physical difficulties, can recording your journaling be as or more effective?
Well, I think was it Rob that just shared about how that he kind of answered that question, didn't he? As far as, he doesn't want to come out of his prayer time, and so he just dictates. I could see where that would be really useful. I think that was the day one software that he was using for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm really glad, Rob, that you weighed in on that, because I was not familiar with that software. So thank you.
I'm too very interested in taking a look at that. My son, as many of you know, had a brain tumor when he was younger, and he cannot read or write. And he is one that can use technology to dictate and to speak and to do that. So it's absolutely a big part of his life, is being able to record his thoughts, he's in school right now, so record notes and things like that.
Sure.
Verbally as opposed to writing. So absolutely.
Yeah. And journaling can take different forms too. It may not be words. It may just be drawing. It may be doing color and expressing through color, or expressing through music and recording the music. Mm-hmm. It can be done any number of ways. And so it's, asking God to show you how you could best process these thoughts and feelings, and trying different things would be a good thing, and it all falls in the same category. Yeah.
Heidi, you mentioned that, how journaling has impacted your relationship with your mother and brought you together. I wanted to share that there's another form of journaling that I've had the benefit of doing, which is journaling with someone to bring out their thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I actually used our Caregiver Companion, the book that Kelly and I wrote, and walked through it with my mom. Mm-hmm. And I learned things about what she was thinking that we probably would never have spoken about, not in a conversation. And it changed the way we were relating to one another. And probably one of the most beautiful gifts I got was my grandmother. When you went to see her, she would always be at her kitchen table, and you always had to sit down and have a cup of coffee. Well, we decided to get her a blank notebook. And it was just a rule. Anyone who came in to visit would ask Grandma a question, and we would write the answers down, and we would ask her questions and journal.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And we used that after she, went into the Lord's loving arms. We used that as a way to communicate and share out with everyone who this person was.
Oh, that is so neat.
So your notion of relationships and the impact on relationships, and bringing the prayer into it, these 4 movements of prayer are so important. I wish I would have asked my grandmother at different times, how did she pray? What did she pray for?
Yeah, that is neat. And stepping into that sacredness. That's beautiful, Deb. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Heidi, so much. I know we're running out of time. Sorry. If anyone has any more questions or comments, please put them in the chat. I want to bring this back up again, Heidi. Life on the Road, Less Traveled. And you can find that at HeidiSaxton.blog. Heidi also has a book, a Facebook group called Catholic Caregivers, which both Kelly and I are members of. It's wonderful. So please encourage everyone to check that out.
And we just wanted everyone to kind of mark your calendars. We have full load of upcoming speakers. We have Paul Beach coming in talking about home care. So how do I know when I need help is our next speaker coming on April 21st. And then in May, we have 2 speakers lined up coming in talking about cultivating meaningful relationships in your caregiving. And then kind of going back to this creative mode again at the end, in the end of May 19th, with Carlos Presinio is coming back and talking about the art and beauty of caring, and kind of again getting back into that creative mode again. So that's kind of our upcoming. And just to remind you that on our website, nourishforcaregivers.com, there are all sorts of resources available that you can see on our website. And we welcome you to take a look at any of those resources that you might be needing.
We just had a comment come into the chat. Thank you, Heidi. I've always struggled with journaling, but I think following the ACTS format will help me.
Oh, thank you. God bless you.
And then our book, The Caregiver Companion, that we've talked about a couple of times, is available.
What a beautiful book.
It is
seriously,
a beautiful book.
If you have a copy, get one for another caregiver that you know.
That's right. It makes a perfect gift. I love that idea, though, that you talked about, is maybe you do need another copy to go through with your parent or whomever.
Yeah,
you're
that's a great idea.
Co-caring with, kind of is your case, is that you and your mom are caring for your dad, but that's a beautiful idea.
Yeah. And that is where we end tonight. And we're just so appreciative. Another thank you. I appreciate the jigsaw puzzle analogy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Thank you. May all your jigsaw puzzles be light ones.
Well, I think, we're going to see a spark, a movement of journaling. Heidi, thank you for bringing the ACTS, though, to light here.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Heidi.
And thank you, everyone. We, again, wish you a happy Easter as we're in the Easter octave. May your joy just shine your light through to others. And we just pray to see you in 2 weeks again here on the Caregiving Wisdom Series.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.